My stepmother mocked my little party business at my sister's wedding, but she had no idea the entire reception was secretly run by my company. Claire, my younger sister, sent me an invitation to her wedding. Yes, that Claire, the golden child, the apple of my father and stepmother's eyes, the one I hadn't spoken to since severing ties with my entire poisonous family. I mean, the audacity, right? 7 years of nothing, no calls, no texts, no, hey, how's life? And now I'm invited to this big, beautiful wedding. It wasn't only the invitation, however. A handwritten message was put inside, in Claire's distinctive handwriting. She wrote that she missed me and wanted to make things right. I stared at it for a long time, wondering whether it was a trick. So, was she serious? After everything that happened and how they treated me, she wanted me back in the fold? Let me backtrack for context. Our mother died when I was 15 and Claire was 12. It devastated us, as you would guess. But while I was still processing my sadness, my father was out there moving on. He remarried a year later, and Denise, the stepmother from hell, moved in. From the start, she had an implicit objective to obliterate any traces of my mother. Family photos? Gone. My mother's favorite decor? Packed and thrown away. I was devastated. But Claire clung to Denise as if she were a savior. I could not blame her. She was only a youngster and she needed someone. But I couldn't stand Denise and the way she controlled everything. Things worsened as we grew older. By the time I started college, Dad refused to aid me financially. What's his reasoning? I needed to grow up and take responsibility. Meanwhile, he was showering Claire with everything: college tuition, a fresh new apartment, and even a car, all paid for without hesitation. I was working part-time, just scraping by, and trying to start an event planning firm from scratch. Denise, of course, regarded it as playing around, whereas Claire was the family's shining star, thriving in school and seemingly deserving of their full support. I eventually had enough. After years of feeling like an outsider in my own family, I severed relations. No spectacular encounter, no major fallout, just silence. I stopped phoning and visiting and concentrated on improving my life. I immersed myself into my work and thrived. My business flourished beyond my wildest dreams, and I reached a point where I didn't need anyone, not Dad, Denise, or Claire. This leads us back to the wedding invitation. At first, I considered throwing it away. Why should I care? They didn't care about me when I was fighting to get through school, save enough money for groceries, or in need of a family. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity or Claire's note. I couldn't tell if she was sincere or if this was another one of Denise's ruses. Regardless, I chose to go. If nothing else, I felt I could come up, observe how things unfolded, and leave if things were too uncomfortable. Here's the thing. I wasn't going to go empty-handed. Despite our years of enmity, I still wanted to do something good for Claire. I offered to help her organize her wedding, giving her complete service from my company at a significant discount. She respectfully declined, stating that Denise had already taken care of everything. That stung a little, to be honest. But hey, I'd done my part. I'd extended an olive branch. The ball was in their court. So there I was, preparing for the big day. I knew coming inside that theater would reopen a lot of old wounds, but I told myself it was worth it. Perhaps Claire was sincere. Maybe this was her way of reaching out and making amends. I had low expectations, but I held out hope. The night before the wedding, I couldn't fall asleep. Memories of the past came flooding back. Holidays where I sat on the sidelines while Claire received all of the attention, talks where Denise belittled me in front of Dad, and moments when I understood I wasn't a part of the family anymore. I persuaded myself it did not matter. I was attending the wedding for Claire, not them. And if things went wrong, I could always go. I had nothing to prove to anybody. The next morning, I dressed in my best suit, got into my car, and drove to the location. I arrived early since that is simply who I am. I'm a planner and always have been. The house was stunning. Lofty ceilings, beautiful flowers, the works. They had obviously spared no expense. As I walked through the doors, I felt a combination of nervousness and dread. This was the first time I had seen my family in nearly a decade. Will they accept me, ignore me, or tear me apart? I had no idea. Claire looked radiant when I spotted her. She approached me, hugged me, and thanked me for coming. For a while I thought, okay, maybe this won't be so bad. But then I saw Denise. She was standing to the side, observing me like a hawk. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and I could see she wasn't pleased I was present. "Welcome," she said, her voice full of phony kindness. "Still running that little party business of yours?" I gritted my teeth and grinned back. "It's going well, thanks." She sneered, plainly unimpressed, and shifted her focus to someone else. Denise's style is classic. I shrugged it off and found my seat. The ceremony was lovely, I'll give them that. Claire appeared really joyful, and for a moment, I forgot about the stress. But deep down, I knew the tranquility would not last. It was my family, after all. Drama was unavoidable. Walking inside the reception area, I felt a knot in my gut tighten. It wasn't the venue because, let's be honest, it was magnificent. The chandeliers glistened like something out of a magazine. The tables were arranged with fine cutlery, and I could see my reflection. The floral arrangements appeared to have come straight from paradise. No, the knot was not part of the decor. It was inevitable. This was the first time I'd seen my family in almost 7 years, and I knew what was coming. I made my way to the seating chart, scanning the list for my name. When I discovered table 14, the knot in my gut became into a sinking feeling. I didn't need a map to find where that was. Weddings follow a pattern. Immediate family sits at the prime tables, followed by close friends, extended family, then random stragglers. Table 14 was clearly in the "we don't care if you're here" zone. When I arrived, I knew the insult was not subtle. My table mates were distant relatives I scarcely remembered. Aunt Lydia, who frequently mispronounced my name and smelled like mothballs, and Uncle Roger, who spent every family meeting droning on about his coin collection. What about the other 2 people at the table? I wasn't even sure who they were. Meanwhile, I noticed Claire's friends and Denise's family gathered around the dance floor. Dad and Denise were understandably center stage, relishing in their self-proclaimed very important person position. I couldn't help but giggle at myself. This was completely on brand for them. 7 years with no touch, and they still treated me like an afterthought. Fine, I did not come here for the seating arrangement. I came for Claire, or so I told myself. I attempted to maintain my cool. I poured myself a drink of water, looked around the room, and pretended I didn't care. But then the first landmine of the evening stepped right up to my table. Dad. And he was undeniably inebriated. Now I realized it wasn't going to be a pleasant interaction. Dad's drinking isn't nice, it's loud, rude, and entirely improper. True to tradition, he smashed his hand onto the table, making Aunt Lydia jump. "What the hell are you doing here, Leonard?" he mumbled. "You weren't supposed to come." I looked at him, shocked. "I got an invitation," I responded calmly. I even took it out of my pocket for verification. "Claire invited me." He snorted. "You should have stayed where you belong. You're just here to embarrass us, aren't you? Showing up with your little party business like it means something." His voice became louder, and I could feel eyes turning toward us. My face blazed with wrath and shame, but I remained silent. Before I could react, Denise was by his side, perfectly timed as always. "Leonard," she asked, her tone mockingly concerned, "do you even make enough to buy that suit, or is it rented?" She gave me a smug look, as if she'd given the punchline of the century. I glanced at her and then back at Dad, realizing there was no point. You can't argue with individuals like them, especially when they're drunk and full of themselves. So, I did the only thing I could. I stood up, adjusted my suit, and said, "Excuse me." I went away without saying another word, but I didn't rush to the door. I wanted to clear my mind first, so I went out to the patio. The cool night air made me feel like I could breathe again, but the noises from inside continued to echo in my ears. Embarrassment. Small party business. God, they couldn't even let me live without destroying me. I leaned on the railing, looking out at the garden, trying to figure out what to do next. Leave without looking back? Go back inside and pretend none of this upset you? Neither option felt appropriate. I was deep in concentration when I heard the music start playing inside. Cheerful, lively, and absolutely opposite of how I felt. That's when I knew I couldn't remain. I owed these folks nothing, least of all my time and energy. I made my way back inside, staying toward the room's boundaries to avoid being observed. On my way out, I looked over at the event workers. They were preparing for the following course, arranging plates with such efficiency that I couldn't help but marvel. Something about them seemed familiar. I slowed down, watching them move, and then it hit me. I knew these folks. These were not simply any staff personnel. They were my employees. My thoughts raced. My company had recently bought a smaller event planning company, and it turned out that this wedding was one of their projects. My team did the job, so it's no surprise that the setup looked so flawless. I experienced a peculiar mix of emotions, including pride, surprise, and above all, a developing sense of irony. Claire and Denise had hired my company without even knowing it. Perhaps they were aware of the situation but chose to ignore it. In any case, the evening's power dynamics had abruptly transformed, and for the first time all night, I felt in control. I moved to the side and took out my phone, dialing my operations manager. When she responded, I spoke quietly. "Hey, quick question," I said. "This wedding, are we running it?" There was a pause, followed by, "Yeah, why?" I couldn't help laughing. "No reason," I said. "Just wanted to confirm." I hung up the phone and returned my attention to the room. As I stood there, still processing the reality that my team was in charge of the wedding at which I had just been humiliated, a knowledge struck me like a freight train. Everything, the flowers, the lighting, the precisely scheduled dinner service, was handled by my company. Claire and Denise had mistakenly, or perhaps consciously, hired me to make their fantasy wedding come true. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Part of me wanted to storm back inside and declare, "Hey, guess what? All of this, it's mine." But the more calculating part of me knew there was a better way to handle this. After all, Dad and Denise had gone out of their way to disrespect me, treating me as if I did not belong. If they didn't want me there, they certainly didn't deserve the efforts of my staff. I called my operations manager again, my hands trembling not from fear, but from adrenaline. "Hey, Kate," I said calmly, "can you confirm the client's contract for tonight?" "Sure, Leonard," she replied, perplexed. "Why?" "I'll explain later. Just tell me, does the contract include the usual termination clause?" Kate didn't even need to look it up. "Yep, hostile or discriminatory behavior towards staff or management gives us the right to terminate services immediately." "Bingo, perfect," I replied, a smile spreading across my face. "We're invoking it. Start packing up." There was a pause on her end, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her brain. "Wait, what happened?" she inquired. "Let's just say the client has made it clear they don't want me or us here," I responded. "I'll fill you in later, just trust me on this one." Kate did not hesitate. "Got it, I'll handle it." I hung up, my heart thumping. This was it. If Dad and Denise believed they could treat me like trash while still reaping the benefits of my labor, they were in for an unpleasant surprise. I wasn't doing this out of spite. Well, maybe a little, but because it felt right to do. I wasn't going to allow them mistreat me while benefiting from my hard work. It was not personal. It was business. Back inside, the event was in full swing. The music was playing, guests were socializing, and servers were serving the first course. On the surface, everything appeared to be in order, but I knew chaos was on its way. My staff worked like a well-oiled machine, discreetly packing equipment and supplies while maintaining appearances. Guests didn't see anything at first, which speaks to their professionalism. I remained outdoors, watching from the terrace as the plot developed. My workers started pulling down floral arrangements, rolling up tablecloths, and silently emptying up decorations. It was like witnessing a magician make an entire room disappear without anyone noticing. Denise may have been able to mock me, but she could not touch the quality of my work or my workers. The first indicator of problems occurred when the lighting crew began disassembling the uplights in the room. A few guests saw, pointing and muttering to each other, but no one spoke out yet. Denise, of course, was too busy conducting court at her table to notice what was going on. Dad was nowhere to be found, likely nursing another drink. As more decorations removed, the whispers became louder. Finally, one of the servers approached Denise and said something to her. Her expression changed from smug to furious in a matter of seconds. She rose from her chair and marched across the room, her shoes clicking like gunshots across the marble floor. "What's going on? Why are they taking everything down?" I could hear her say from the patio. The server seemed really afraid. "I don't know, ma'am. No. You'll have to ask the event manager." That's when she noticed Kate, who was quietly directing the personnel. Denise stormed over, her screaming getting louder with each step. "What is this? What the hell are you doing? Kate did not flinch. We're following the terms of the contract, ma'am. Services are being terminated due to hostile behavior toward our management. Denise blinked. What hostile behavior? Who even is your management? Kate motioned toward the patio where I stood. Denise turned, her gaze sharpening as she noticed me. I gave her a little wave and kept my demeanor as bland as possible. She stormed out, her face flushed with wrath. You, she hissed, you can't do this. This is Claire's wedding, and this is my company, I responded calmly. You made it clear earlier that you don't respect me or what I do, so why would you want my services? Her jaw fell. You're doing this to punish me, to ruin Claire's wedding. I shake my head. This isn't about Claire. It's about the way you and Dad treated me. You can't humiliate me and then expect me to provide top-tier service. That's not how this works. Denise stammered, trying to come up with an answer. Kate approached me first and offered me a clipboard. We're ready to roll out, she remarked. Everything's packed? She nodded. Thanks, Kate. Great work, as always. Denise appeared to be about to burst, but I didn't stick around to find out. I handed her my lawyer's card and told her, if you have any questions about the contract, please contact our legal team. Have a great evening. I walked away, leaving her dumbfounded. The aftermath was considerably more chaotic than I expected. By the time my crew arrived, the reception hall was nearly empty. The chandeliers hung from the ceiling, but there were no flowers, tablecloths, or uplights. Guests stood about, puzzled and whispering. Claire appeared to be on the point of tears, and for a single second, I felt horrible. But then I reminded myself that this was not about her. This was about standing up for oneself. The drive home from Claire's wedding should have been enjoyable. I mean, I had just organized one of the most famous mic drops in my life. But when the taillights of my team's trucks faded from my rearview mirror, I couldn't help but feel conflicted. This was not how I had expected the day would go. Still, I knew I had made the proper decision. For the first time in a long time, I advocated for myself, not just as a business owner, but as a person. And while the night did not go as planned, I was not going to let that stop me from moving forward. This was only the beginning. I didn't have much time to think about it, though, because the fallout started almost immediately. About 20 minutes into my travel, the first signs of turmoil appeared on my phone. Text messages, missed calls, and voicemails poured in. Denise, understandably, led the charge with a series of heated texts. They were long and meandering, full of claims that I had spoiled everything, even Claire's big day, out of spite. Every one was more spectacular than the last. I can't believe you did this to Claire, she said. You're a selfish, vindictive little boy who can't handle someone else being happy. You ruined this family's reputation. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Oh, she wasn't finished. The texts kept coming, each one more bizarre than the one before it. She accused me of undermining the wedding out of jealousy, called me sad, and even demanded a full refund for the occasion. Yes, refund. She really believed I should repay her for the services my company had already rendered, as if she had some moral high ground to stand on. You've embarrassed this entire family, she went on. Do you know what people are saying about us now? I should have known better than to trust you with anything important. You are a failure, Leonard, and you always will be. The boldness was quite hilarious. I did not react and instead silenced her phone number. She wasn't worth my time. Dad was not far behind. His voicemails were less coherent, but equally hostile. I'll spare you the details, but the phrases selfish brat and I'll sue your ass were prominent. He even threatened to call the cops at one point, which really made me laugh. What are you calling the cops for? Breaching a contract that he had no idea existed? Good luck with it. Claire sent the most shocking message, though. I had expected her to be angry, but when I finally read her text, it was not what I expected. She wrote, "Why would you do this to me? I thought you came to support me. I didn't think you'd ruin my wedding." Oof, that one hit harder than I anticipated. It wasn't like Denise's vitriol or Dad's drunken rants. This felt like genuine pain. Claire and I hadn't talked in years, but I could still sense the pain in her words. I could tell she didn't understand why I made the decision I did, and I don't blame her. Claire had always been caught in the thick of the confusion. Denise had her claws in her from an early age, and Dad was not the type of dad who fostered independent thought. Claire had grown up in the same toxic atmosphere from which I had escaped, but instead of battling it, she had adapted. I wanted to respond to her and explain my perspective, but I wasn't sure it would make a difference. For a little moment, I worried if I had made a mistake. But then I remembered why I called in the first place. The next morning, the situation worsened. True to form, Denise couldn't let it go. She began phoning people, family members, acquaintances, anyone who would listen, and manipulating the narrative to her advantage. By lunchtime, I'd received texts from 2 aunts and a cousin, all asking me to explain what had happened. To avoid repeating the same thing over and over, I sent a blanket text to the few relatives I still semi-trusted. Long story short, I was humiliated, disrespected, and treated like an outsider. So I terminated my company's services in accordance with the terms of the contract. If you have any questions, please ask Denise. If you want to know the truth, ask the venue workers. I am done defending myself. One of my aunts replied nearly immediately. "Good for you," she wrote. "We watched how Denise treated you on Thanksgiving 5 years ago. She's always been terrible to you. I am simply sorry Claire got caught in the middle. Her support caught me off guard. I'd spent so many years assuming that my entire family had abandoned me that I hadn't considered the notion that some of them might be on my side. It was a minor consolation in the midst of a hurricane. Then came the unexpected reaction from the guests. By the afternoon, I began receiving emails and queries, business queries. Apparently, news had passed among some of the wedding guests about what had occurred, and a number of them were impressed with how my crew handled the matter. One woman, whom I dimly recognized as Claire's in-laws' family friend, contacted me to express her admiration for my staff's professionalism. "I heard what happened," she texted, "and I just wanted to say, your team handled everything with incredible grace. It was clear the issue wasn't with your company, but with the family. I'm hosting a charity gala in a few months, and would love to work with you if you're available." Talk about a silver lining. I answered right away, thanking her for her nice remarks and arranging a time to discuss the event. Within a few hours, I had 3 more similar emails from different guests. It was surreal. The same wedding I'd been accused of wrecking was now providing free attention for my business. Denise's attempts to embarrass me had failed horribly. Of course, Denise wasn't finished. By the evening, she had taken her campaign against me digital. I noticed she had written a negative review about my company online, accusing us of being unprofessional and untrustworthy. The review was full of pure lies, stating that we arrived late, offered bad service, and abandoned the event without warning. Thankfully, I was ready for this. I quickly contacted my lawyer, and within hours, we had sent Denise a cease and desist letter informing her that any additional false remarks would be considered defamatory. The review was withdrawn the next day, and as far as I know, she has not attempted to submit anything else since. Denise reportedly decided to take her entitled tantrum to new heights. The next morning, while I was going through my emails, my lawyer called me. "You're going to love this one," she said, her tone tinged with irony. "Claire's family is threatening to sue you for breach of contract." I actually laughed aloud. "You're kidding," I replied. "On what grounds?" "They're claiming you abandoned the event and caused irreparable damage to Claire's wedding," I said. "They're demanding a full refund and additional damages for emotional distress." The stupidity of it nearly made me spit out my coffee. Emotional distress? Because I enforced a clause they agreed to? That's rich, my attorney giggled. "Don't worry, Leonard. This is nothing more than a scare tactic." Their lawyer, if you can even call him that, sent a laughably vague letter with no specifics. I'll draft a response, but they don't have a leg to stand on. A few days later, Denise's lawsuit went to the next ludicrous level. Their lawyer, who I subsequently discovered was one of Dad's poker cronies, issued me another letter saying that my choice to cease services had resulted in public humiliation and severe financial loss. He even included some inflated figures for the estimated cost of event decor and food services. What is the best part? The letter also accused me of being malicious and vindictive for removing the decorations during the event. The plaintiff's family was subjected to public embarrassment, the text reads. The abrupt removal of event services tarnished the reputation of the hosts and caused irreparable harm to their social standing. I couldn't stop giggling when reading that. Denise was sincerely attempting to portray herself as the victim in a setting she had completely contrived. The irony was so thick it could be cut with a knife. However, my lawyer was significantly less amused. They're trying to throw mud at the wall and see what sticks, she explained on our next call. Their entire case hinges on the idea that you violated the contract, but the clause you invoked is ironclad. We'll respond formally, and I'll make it clear that pursuing this further will only waste their time and money. The legal back and forth lasted nearly 2 weeks. Denise and Dad persisted, most likely because their counsel lacked the courage to tell them they had no chance of winning. Meanwhile, my lawyer was working behind the scenes to gather all of the evidence we needed to permanently close this case. We had everything. Claire's original contract, which clearly detailed the termination provision, witness statements from my workers who were present when Denise made her unpleasant comments, and the pièce de résistance, security footage from the venue. The cameras had caught everything, even Dad's drunken outburst and Denise berating my crew. When their lawyer saw the tape, the case fell almost immediately. My lawyer sent a last letter outlining the information in great detail and informing them that if they continued to pursue the case, we will sue for defamation and legal fees. 2 days later, my lawyer emailed me to say the matter had been withdrawn. No additional action is required. The most unexpected consequence, however, came from Claire's new husband, Adam. He called me several days after the wedding. I almost didn't answer, but out of curiosity, I did. "Hey, Leonard," he said with an uneasy tone. "I know Claire wants to talk to you," he said. "She feels terrible about everything. She's just, I don't know, scared. She's stuck between you and Denise, and it's tearing her up." I exhaled. "I get it, but if she wants to talk, it has to come from her. I'm not going to chase her down." "I'll tell her," he said. I hung up feeling oddly hopeful. Maybe Claire and I still had a chance to fix things. Perhaps not. In any case, I had finally stood up for myself, which was a victory in my opinion. Claire texted me a few weeks after the chaos had settled. "Hello, can we meet up? I feel like we should chat." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to feel. On the one hand, there was Claire reaching out, the same Claire who had remained mute while Denise and Dad humiliated me at her wedding, the same Claire who had seen my company, which I had created from the ground up, be degraded and then walked away without saying anything. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the persistent doubt. What did she want from me now? Was this a true olive branch, or was she simply trying to smooth things over for her own benefit? Despite my better judgment, I consented to meet her. "Sure," I responded. "Let me know when and where." We met at a little cafe, which I used to frequent when I was starting my business. It was neutral ground, yet I couldn't help but notice tension in the air as I went in. Claire was already there, drinking coffee. She looked up and gave an awkward, forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey," she remarked, motioning for me to sit. "Hey," I said, taking a seat across from her. There was a lengthy gap before she spoke. "I'm really sorry about everything that happened at the wedding," she told us. "It got so out of hand, and I know Denise and Dad said some things they shouldn't have." I raised an eyebrow. "Some things?" She shuffled uncomfortably in her seat. "Okay, a lot of things. But you have to understand they were stressed. Weddings are a lot of pressure, and emotions were high. It wasn't personal." I gave out a sour laugh. "Not personal, Claire? They called me an embarrassment. They mocked my business, belittled me, and basically told me I shouldn't have been there. How is that not personal?" She sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "Look, I'm not saying what they did was right, but you pulling out the way you did wasn't fair either. You ruined the reception, Leonard. People are still talking about it." There it was, the genuine reason she wanted to speak. "So, this isn't about what they said or did," I stated with an icy tone. "This is about how it made you look." "That's not what I'm saying," she said hastily, but the guarded tone in her voice suggested a different story. "I just think you could have handled it differently. You didn't have to punish everyone because of what Denise and Dad said." I glanced at her, trying to figure out if she believed what she was saying or if she was simply repeating Denise's narrative. "Punish everyone?" I repeated. "Claire, they hired my company. They insulted me, the owner, in front of everyone. They didn't even bother hiding their disdain. You expect me to just stand there and take it?" "I expected you to think about someone other than yourself," she replied. "This wasn't about you. It was my wedding. Do you know how humiliating it was when everything fell apart? People were asking me what happened, and I didn't know what to say." I had to deal with the fallout while you just walked away. I leaned back in my seat, astonished. So that's what this is about. Not what they did, not how they treated me. It's about how it inconvenienced you. That's not fair, she exclaimed, her voice rising significantly. I'm trying to fix this, but you're making it impossible. Fix it? I repeated. Claire, you haven't once acknowledged what I went through. You're sitting here blaming me for standing up for myself because it didn't fit into your perfect little wedding narrative. Do you even hear yourself? She crossed her arms and her expression hardened. Maybe I wouldn't have to say this if you hadn't made everything about you. I invited you to the wedding because I wanted you there. I was trying to include you, but you turned it into a disaster. I felt a strong aching in my chest, but it wasn't sadness. It was clarity. This was not a misunderstanding. Claire was not stuck between Denise and Dad. She was exactly like them, entitled, manipulative, and incapable of accepting responsibility for her actions. I stood up and tossed some cash on the table to cover my coffee. You know what, Claire? I'm done. With you, with Dad, with Denise, all of it. I've spent my whole life being the scapegoat for this family, and I'm not doing it anymore. Her eyes expanded. Well, Leonard, wait. No, I replied firmly. You don't get to rewrite this. I came to your wedding because I thought maybe things had changed, but all I got was the same disrespect I've dealt with my whole life. And now you're sitting here blaming me for having the audacity to walk away from it. I'm done, Claire. For good. She sat astonished as I walked out of the cafe. That was the last time I spoke with Claire. She sent a few texts in the days that followed, but I didn't react. There was nothing more to say. She had shown me who she truly was, and I believed her. I cut Denise and Dad totally out of my life, and it was the best move I'd ever taken. In the months that followed, my firm grew, due in part to a slew of new clients who were impressed by how skillfully my team managed the wedding disaster. Denise and Dad may have attempted to break me down, but all they did was make me stronger. And Claire, she faded into the background of my memories. I stopped worrying about whether she'd ever view things differently because it didn't matter. Family is not about blood, it's about respect, and no one had showed me any. My brother stalked my girlfriend for 2 years, and our parents tried to bribe her to drop charges before his 18-month jail sentence. My 30-male younger brother Albert, 27 male, has been wrecking my life for years, but my parents refuse to see it. He is now targeting my girlfriend Claire, a 26-year-old woman, and I am at a loss for what to do. We live in a little Ohio town where everyone knows each other. My parents own a successful accounting firm and value their reputation. They had me first, and Albert 3 years later. Albert was perfect in their eyes from the start. When Albert was 7 and I was 10, I saved my allowance for months to purchase a remote control helicopter. Albert asked to play with it, but I declined because he had already damaged 2 of my toys that week. While I was in school the next day, he took it outside and flew it straight into our neighbor's fence, utterly breaking it. When I returned home and discovered the parts, Albert informed our parents that I had flown it carelessly and it had been an accident. My parents made me apologize to Albert for not sharing and bought him his own helicopter the following weekend. When I was 15, I had been with my first girlfriend, Sophie, for about 6 months. Albert, who was 12 at the time, began telling others at school that I had cheated on her with several girls. He made up elaborate stories about seeing me with other girls behind the movie theater and at parties I had never been to. Sophie broke up with me without even asking for my side of the story. When I confronted Albert, he just shrugged and said, maybe I shouldn't be so boring if I wanted to keep a girlfriend. My parents told me I was overreacting and that guys will be boys. The practice persisted into high school and college. Albert found a way to end every significant relationship I had. He informed my girlfriend Holly that I had a gambling addiction and showed her bogus bank statements. He convinced my girlfriend Megan that I was going to break up with her anyhow, so she should spare herself the embarrassment. My parents either refused to believe me or claimed Albert was only looking out for me. After college, I returned home to help with the family business and save money. Albert also lived at home and worked part-time in a sporting goods store. He'd never had a job for more than a few months. My parents paid for everything, including his car, phone, and clothes. They said he was still discovering himself. Claire and I met 2 years ago in a downtown coffee shop. She was traveling from the next town for a job interview at the local elementary school. She's a second-grade teacher and the nicest person I've ever met. We began dating, and for the first time in my life, I kept my relationship a secret from my family. For 8 months, I did not tell them anything about Claire. We'd meet in the neighboring town or drive to the city for dates. I'd learnt my lesson about introducing women into my family. But Claire began to query why she had never met my parents or visited my residence. She assumed I was embarrassed of her or that I was married. I needed to make a choice. I decided to inform my parents about Claire first, without Albert present. I went to their house on Thursday evening when Albert was supposed to be at work. I said that I'd been seeing someone for 8 months and wanted to take her to dinner on Sunday. My mother immediately began organizing the dinner and questioning Claire about her employment and family. When I stated her profession as a teacher, my father nodded in approval. Everything appeared normal. Sunday arrived, and I brought Claire up from her apartment. She had purchased a new outfit and spent an hour styling her hair. She was thrilled to finally meet my family. I told her a few stories about Albert, but they seemed like usual sibling rivalry. I did not want to scare her away. We arrived at my parents' place at precisely 6 o'clock. My mother answered the door with a big smile and a hearty hug for Claire. My father shook her hand and complimented her clothing. Albert arrived from the kitchen and quickly pushed by our mother to reach Claire. He enveloped her in a hug that was at least 5 seconds longer than necessary. Claire's smile faded slightly, but she graciously hugged him back. Throughout dinner, Albert controlled the conversation. He sat directly across from Claire, bending forward to touch her arm while they talked. He told stories about my childhood, but each one was distorted to make me look awful. He described the time I became sick at a school carnival as being too weak to do usual things. He used the tale of me getting lost at a mall as proof that I had always been careless and required constant monitoring. My parents laughed at each anecdote, adding their own comments about how Albert had always been the more dependable brother. Claire kept looking at me, confused. She has heard different versions of the same story from me. The worst moment was when my mother served dessert. Albert insisted on cutting Claire's slice of cake for her and attempted to feed her the first mouthful with his fork. Claire respectfully rejected, claiming she could manage, but Albert insisted. He actually gripped her chin with his free hand and attempted to guide the fork into her mouth. Claire jerked away and exclaimed, "Stop, please." Albert laughed and said he was simply being friendly. Claire excused herself from supper to use the bathroom. I followed her down the hall and discovered Albert standing outside the bathroom door. When Claire emerged, he moved closer to her, effectively trapping her between himself and the wall. Albert was telling her that she seems too intelligent and ambitious for someone like me. He stated I'd always been the sort to hold others back and that she should try dating someone more driven, like him. Claire attempted to step around him, but he moved to block her way. She said, "Excuse me," twice, but he continued speaking. I stood between them, telling Albert to back off. He raised his hands in fake submission, claiming he was only getting to know my girlfriend. My parents emerged from the kitchen, asking what was going on. Albert said I was neurotic and possessive. My father advised me to relax and quit being so territorial. We left soon after that. Claire was quiet as she drove back to her apartment. She finally admitted that dinner had been awkward and Albert had made her feel uneasy. She inquired whether he always acted this way around ladies. I told her the truth about his pattern of destroying my relationships. Claire listened attentively and did not interrupt. When I finished, she stated she understood why I had taken so long to introduce her. She also stated that she would not allow Albert or anyone else to harm our relationship. We agreed that we would limit our contact with my family and only see them when necessary. For 2 weeks, everything seemed normal. Then Claire began receiving phone calls at work. The caller would hang up the moment she answered. Her principal stated that someone had been calling the school and asking questions about her personal life and work schedule. A parent reported that a man was sitting in the parking lot during pickup time, just monitoring the building. Claire began staying later at school to avoid walking to her car alone. One evening, she called me in tears because someone had followed her home and sat outside her apartment building for 20 minutes before driving off. She had noted down the license plate number. I ran it through a friend who works at the DMV, and it came back registered to one of Albert's high school classmates. I drove straight to my parents' house and found Albert in the garage, working on his car. I challenged him over the harassment. He initially denied everything, then smirked and suggested Claire was simply paranoid. He claimed that some ladies couldn't handle attention from actual males. I grabbed him by his shirt and urged him to keep away from Claire. He shoved me back, saying Claire was fair game because I clearly couldn't care for her properly. That's when I struck him. I punched him right in the jaw, and he fell backward into his toolbox. My parents ran out of the house. Albert was grabbing his face and screamed that I had attacked him without reason. I tried to explain about the stalking and harassment, but they refused to listen. My mother stated that I had clearly lost my mind and required anger management. My father advised me to leave the house and not return until I apologized to Albert. I departed and have not spoken with any of them since. That happened 6 months ago. Claire and I moved in together and tried to move on with our lives, but the harassment continued. If anything, things grew worse. I thought things couldn't get worse after my previous post, but I was mistaken. The harassment has grown beyond anything I could have predicted, and my family's reaction has been much more twisted than I expected. After I stopped communicating with my parents and Albert, the number of phone calls to Claire's employment increased. Her principal received daily phone calls from someone pretending to be her ex-boyfriend, alleging she had mental health difficulties and should not be around children. The caller had detailed information regarding her lesson plans and the grades she taught. Someone was certainly paying careful attention to her. Claire's vehicle was vandalized twice in the school parking lot. First, someone poured paint thinner onto her windshield, cracking it totally. The second time, all 4 tires were shredded. The school added more security cameras, but whomever was doing it knew exactly where the blind spots were. The breaking point occurred 6 weeks ago. Claire was working late, grading papers in her classroom at around 8 p.m. The custodian had already left, and she believed she was alone in the building. She heard footsteps in the corridor and believed it was the night security guy on his rounds. When she looked up from her desk, Albert was standing in the classroom doorway. He had managed to get past the closed main entrance and strolled through the entire school to find her room. Claire instantly grabbed her phone and threatened to contact the police. Albert entered the room and locked the door behind him. He explained that they needed to converse without my intervention. He informed Claire that I had been lying about him and that he had never intended to make her uncomfortable. He stated he understood why she had the false idea, but he was really attempting to protect her from my domineering tendencies. Claire stood up and ordered him to go immediately. Albert walked closer to her desk, saying he wasn't done talking. He claimed I had a history of psychological manipulation and that all of my prior girlfriends had left me for the same reason. He claimed I was isolating Claire from her friends and relatives and that she would soon be left with only me. Claire attempted to walk around her desk toward the door, but Albert grabbed her wrist. He insisted she listen since he was the only one brave enough to give her the truth. Claire snatched her arm away and dashed towards the door. Albert followed her down the hallway, warning her that she would regret not listening to him. Claire made it to the main office and set off the silent alarm. Within minutes, police came and discovered Albert still inside the building, peering through the windows of other classrooms. He explained to the cops that he was come to pick up his nephew, but had gotten lost while seeking for the main office. When questioned with his nephew's name and teacher, he was unable to answer them. Officers detained Albert for trespassing and obtained Claire's statement. She gave them images of her vandalized car and audio recordings of some of the threatening voicemails she had been receiving. The detective assigned to the case stated that they had enough evidence to charge Albert with stalking and harassment, in addition to trespassing. Here's when things get extremely twisted. My parents hired a lawyer for Albert before he was even arraigned. The lawyer contacted Claire's principal, claiming that Claire was having an affair with Albert and that her claims were retaliation for him discontinuing the relationship. The lawyer sent bogus text messages purporting to be from Claire, imploring Albert to leave his girlfriend and join her. Claire's principal called her into the office and inquired about the claims. Claire showed him the police reports and described the entire situation. The principal believed her, but added that the school board was concerned about the negative publicity. They proposed that Claire take a leave of absence until the criminal case was completed. Claire refused to quit her employment due to false accusations. She hired her own lawyer, who quickly identified the forged text messages as evidence. The metadata indicated that they were created on a computer and not sent from a phone. Claire's counsel filed a complaint with the state bar against Albert's attorney for presenting fake evidence. The most awful thing occurred last week. My mother phoned Claire and asked her to dismiss the charges. She described Albert as a confused young man who had developed affections for her but didn't know how to express them properly. She offered to pay for Claire's car repairs and vowed to keep Albert away from her if she gave him another chance. When Claire declined, my mother's tone altered dramatically. She claimed Claire was destroying their family due to a misunderstanding and that no jury would trust her testimony against Albert's. She said Albert had acquaintances who could testify that Claire had been flirting with him at family dinner and luring him on. She told Claire that small communities have long memories and that pursuing the allegations could make it impossible for her to continue working here. Claire recorded the entire conversation and provided it to the prosecutor. Witness intimidation is considered a criminal in our state. So now my mother is also facing criminal prosecution. Albert's trial is slated for next month. His lawyer is attempting to negotiate a plea agreement, but the prosecutor claims the evidence is too solid and the behavior is too terrible to warrant anything less than jail time. The school board unanimously agreed to assist Claire and provide her with additional security measures. Claire and I have been looking for work in various states. We both understand that staying here means coping with my family's hostility for years to come. My parents have made it clear that they will never stop blaming Claire for their son's conduct, even if Albert ends up in jail. I keep thinking about all the warning indicators I've missed throughout the years. Albert damaged every relationship, every lie my parents believed, and every time they preferred his version of events over clear proof. I assumed they were simply enabling terrible behavior, but now I realize they were actively engaged in it. Albert's trial concluded last week, and the impact has been more dramatic than I anticipated. The verdict was guilty on all charges, but what transpired throughout the trial highlighted how severe my family's dysfunction is. The prosecution produced a massive amount of evidence against Albert. Security footage from the school saw him entering through a side door that he had propped open earlier in the day. Phone records showed that he had made over 60 calls to Claire's employer. Albert and his friends used text messages to arrange the harassing campaign. The bogus evidence produced by his counsel was also used as an example of continued witness intimidation. Claire testified for 3 hours on the stalking and harassment. She remained cool and accurate throughout her evidence, even when Albert's counsel attempted to suggest she had encouraged his actions. The judge halted the cross-examination twice because the questions got inappropriate. Albert took the stand in his own defense, even though his lawyer warned him not to. He immediately began raving about how I had stolen Claire from him and how she was giving him confusing signals. He claimed Claire smiled at him during the family supper, which he saw as romantic interest. He explained that following her and calling her workplace were merely his way of getting to know her better. The prosecutor questioned Albert about how breaking into an elementary school at night was part of getting to know someone. Albert said he hoped Claire would be impressed by his tenacity and eventually agree to speak with him without my meddling. When asked why he destroyed her car, Albert explained that he was trying to give her an excuse to call him for help. The most painful moment occurred when the prosecutor showed a recording of my mother threatening Claire. Albert stopped the video, yelling that his mother was correct and Claire was destroying their family. He stated that Claire should have been appreciative for his attention because most women would be fortunate to have someone battle for them the way he had fought for her. The jury deliberated for little than 2 hours. Albert was convicted of stalking, harassment, criminal trespassing, and vandalism. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in jail, followed by 2 years probation. He was also ordered to avoid contact with Claire and me for 5 years. Albert's reaction to the ruling was dramatic. He began screaming at Claire that she would regret ruining his life. He threatened to let everyone in town know what kind of person she was. The bailiffs had to physically restrain him as he was hauled out the courthouse. My parents sat in the front row for the entire trial, glaring at Claire and muttering to one another. Following the verdict, my father stood up and declared that it was a farce of justice. He said that Albert was the true victim, and Claire had twisted the entire thing to make herself appear innocent. My mother's trial for witness intimidation was set for the next week. She accepted a plea deal that included 6 months of house arrest and community service. Her attorney managed to keep her out of jail because she had no past criminal record, but she now has a permanent criminal conviction on her record. The local papers covered both cases extensively. My parents' accounting firm lost several significant clients who refused to work with a family involved in stalking and witness intimidation. My father had to sell his partnership in the firm and take a job with a larger company in the next county. The most stunning revelation occurred following Albert's imprisonment. His cellmate from his brief pretrial imprisonment contacted the prosecutor with additional information. Albert had allegedly boasted about destroying my prior relationships and had outlined plans to further his harassment of Claire if he was released. Albert told his cellmate that he wanted to follow Claire to her new employment and continue harassing her. He claimed he was confident he could finally wear her down and persuade her that I was the problem. He further stated that he had pals who were eager to help him continue the campaign, even if it meant going to jail. This information was utilized to support the maximum sentence and the extended no-contact order. The prosecutor claimed Albert's own remarks demonstrated he had no intention of changing his behavior and posed a continuing threat to both Claire and myself. Claire and I received employment offers in Colorado the day after Albert was sentenced. We accepted instantly and gave notice at our current positions. Claire's principal and school board issued letters of recommendation praising her professionalism throughout the ordeal. Several instructors and parents also wrote letters praising her integrity and effort. We've started packing and will be gone before Albert is freed from jail. Claire claims she is not fleeing the situation, but rather preparing for a new life in which Albert's acts will no longer define her. I fully agree with her. The challenges have fractured my extended family. Some relatives say Albert received just what he deserved and have apologized for my parents' actions. Others believe Claire overreacted and that we should have handled the situation privately inside the family. I've decided not to retain relationships with people who believe stalking and harassment are acceptable family actions. We've been in Colorado for 4 months now, and life here has been very different from what we left behind in Ohio. Claire got a job in an excellent primary school, and I work for a marketing agency in Denver. For the first time in years, we can wake up without fear of harassment or family conflict. Albert was freed from jail 2 weeks earlier, having served his entire sentence. His probation officer contacted us to confirm our address and reminded us of the no-contact rule. He broke the injunction within 3 days after being released. Albert found our new phone number and called Claire's school, claiming to be her brother and reporting a family emergency. Claire had expressly warned them about probable harassment from Ohio, which raised suspicions among the school secretary. They called Claire to confirm, and she promptly informed the local police and Albert's probation officer. Because Albert crossed state borders to break the no-contact order, federal charges were filed. He was detained again within a week and now faces more jail time. His probation was revoked, and he faces another 18 months in prison. My parents presumably drove to Colorado to look for us following Albert's arrest. They went to Claire's school and requested to talk with her, claiming they wanted to apologize and resolve matters. The school principal summoned the police, who walked my parents off the campus and warned them against trespassing. That evening, my parents arrived at our apartment building. They managed to get past the security door and were knocking on our door when we arrived home from work. My father instantly began ranting about how we had wrecked their family and Albert's life. My mother cried and begged Claire to withdraw the additional charges against Albert. I told them to leave immediately or I'd contact the cops. My father stated they had driven 12 hours to speak with us and deserved to be heard. Claire quietly took out her phone and began dialing. My mother grabbed Claire's arm and claimed she only needed 5 minutes to explain everything. This was their second mistake. Putting hands on Claire after everything that had transpired was unforgivable. I went in between them and informed my parents that they had precisely 30 seconds to leave our building before the cops arrived. My father began threatening to sue us for harming his business and family's reputation. He promised to make sure everyone in our new neighborhood realized who we truly were. My mother claimed they had spent their entire life savings on lawyers and court bills because of us. The cops arrived and arrested both of my parents for harassment and trespassing since they had crossed state boundaries to torment us. Federal prosecutors are considering filing further charges. The local district attorney stated that my parents' behavior demonstrated an escalation pattern that called for harsh punishment. Claire and I testified via video link at Albert's federal sentencing hearing last month. The judge sentenced him to 2 years in federal prison and 3 years of supervised probation. He will be ineligible for early release, and any subsequent infractions will result in considerably lengthier sentences. My parents were released on bail, but they are not allowed to leave Ohio while their case is pending. Their lawyer is attempting to reach a plea agreement, but the prosecutor wants jail time because to their history of witness intimidation and physical contact with Claire. The most enjoyable aspect of this whole journey has been seeing my parents face the repercussions of their conduct. For 30 years, they tolerated Albert's actions and made excuses for his increasingly serious wrongdoing. They never believed his victims and always tried to blame everyone else for his acts. Now they face criminal prosecution, financial devastation, and a loss of communal standing. Their business is gone, their reputation is ruined, and their only child is in federal prison. The reality they crafted over decades of denial and enabling has finally crumbled around them. Claire and I married last month in a quiet ceremony attended by only a few of our closest friends. We did not invite any family members and did not make it public. We wanted our wedding to focus on our future together, not on the unhealthy relationships we had left behind. Several people have asked if I ever feel guilty for what happened to my parents and Albert. The answer is no. Every decision they made, lie they uttered, every victim they blamed contributed directly to this result. They had numerous opportunities to confront Albert's actions, but decided not to. They caused this scenario via years of intentional blindness and enabling. Claire is pregnant with our first kid, due in the spring. We've decided to raise our children without any interaction with my parents or Albert. Our children will grow up knowing they are safe and protected, something I never had in my own upbringing. We've constructed a life around honesty, accountability, and mutual respect. We will not allow harassment, manipulation, or abuse from anyone, even family members. Breaking the cycle of dysfunction was the best decision we'd ever taken. People occasionally ask if I miss my family or regret cutting them off entirely. I don't miss the endless drama, the gaslighting, or the uncertainty of what Albert will do next. I have no regrets about protecting Claire and our future children from those who refuse to face their own destructive behavior. Claire and our unborn child make up my genuine family. We're creating something healthy and stable together, distant from the toxic environment that defined my first 30 years. That is enough family for me. Story number 2. After being tormented by his family for being poor, I uncovered my husband's secret first marriage. Now I'm divorcing him and launching a business with his sister. Hello, everyone. I am Nora, a 28-year-old woman seeking help on a matter involving my spouse, Ethan, a 30-year-old man, and his family. We have been married for 3 years and together for 6. When we first met, everything seemed ideal. Ethan was friendly, attentive, and supportive. His family also appeared decent, particularly his sister, Lila, a 32-year-old female. I was raised in a tiny town with working-class parents. My father worked in a factory, while my mother cleaned houses. They worked hard, yet battled to make ends meet. I learned the importance of money and hard work at a young age. I started babysitting when I was 12 years old and obtained my first real part-time job at 16, working after school and on weekends at the local cafe. Despite financial constraints, my parents constantly encouraged me to continue my education. They couldn't afford to send me to a nice institution, so they encouraged me to attend community college while working full-time. It was difficult to balance employment and school, but I was determined to make a better life for myself. After graduating from community college, I worked as a marketing assistant for a small local company. I worked my way up by taking on additional assignments and learning everything I could about the profession. 6 years later, I'm the marketing manager for a mid-sized corporation in the city. I'm proud of what I've accomplished and the career I've started from scratch. Ethan's background couldn't be more different than mine. He is from a wealthy family that runs a thriving chain of high-end restaurants. His parents, Margaret, 58, and Charles, 60, began with a small restaurant and have grown it into an empire over the last 3 decades. Ethan grew raised in a home, attended fancy schools, and never worried about money. When we first met at a mutual friend's party, I was frightened by Ethan's pedigree, but he was down to earth and really interested in getting to know me. He stated he respected my work ethic and how I had started my career from nothing. We bonded over our mutual passion of cooking, but his experiences came from sophisticated culinary classes and mine from assisting my mother in our modest kitchen. Everything went well over the first couple years of our partnership. Ethan's family seemed to welcome me, even if they made occasional remarks about my quaint upbringing. I dismissed these, assuming they were simply attempting to relate to me in their own manner. After we married, things began to alter. Ethan's relatives, particularly his mother Margaret, made increasingly sharp remarks. They would say things like, "It must be nice to marry into money," or, "I'm sure Nora appreciates not having to clip coupons anymore." I tried to laugh it off at first, but it eventually became too much for me. Margaret began criticizing my clothes, claiming they were cheap or unprofessional. She'd make a big deal about gifting me costly designer stuff for birthdays and Christmas, then get upset when I didn't wear them to family gatherings. I tried to explain that fancy clothing were not appropriate for my position, but she just rolled her eyes and said something about career females. Ethan never advocated for me during these interactions. He'd explained that his mother was simply trying to be polite and that I should be appreciative for the gifts. He began urging me to quit my job, saying I didn't need to work anymore. But I enjoy my job, and I'm not comfortable relying on others for money. Furthermore, I worked hard to get where I am. I'm not prepared to give that up. The issue worsened when Ethan's sister, Lila, became engaged to a man from a similar wealthy household. Margaret repeatedly compared me to Lila's fiancé, mentioning how nicely he fit in with the family. She'd specifically asked me when I was going to start dressing more suitably for family occasions, as Lila's fiancé had. I attempted to explain to Ethan how his family's behavior was impacting me, but he constantly rejected my concerns. He'd suggest I was overly sensitive or that I needed to work more to fit in. It appeared that he was more concerned with making his family happy than supporting his wife. The problem came to a head last month. Ethan's family was organizing a large charity banquet to commemorate the restaurant chain's 30th anniversary. Margaret insisted on purchasing me a dress for the event. It was a fashionable gown that cost more than I earned in a month. I was uncomfortable, but Ethan insisted I wear it to make his mother happy and to look like a wealthy restaurateur's wife. At the gala, I felt out of place. Everyone was talking about their recent trips to exotic destinations or the latest fancy vehicles they had purchased. I tried to participate in conversations, but people rapidly lost interest when they discovered I couldn't talk about yacht clubs or private aircraft. I went to the restroom to take a break and overheard Margaret talking with her pals by the sinks. She was giggling as she described how she had to dress up the help to make me acceptable. She claimed Ethan could have done so much better than some girl from the trailer park, and she was embarrassed to introduce me as her daughter-in-law. She even stated that she was attempting to get Ethan to have me sign a post-nuptial agreement to protect the family's assets. I was devastated. I had spent years trying to fit in with Ethan's family, believing that if I worked hard enough, they would embrace me. However, hearing Margaret's words made me understand that would never happen. They would always regard me as beneath them, no matter what I did. I exited the bathroom and found Ethan. I informed him what I had heard and that I wanted to go. Instead of supporting me, he accused me of eavesdropping and claimed I had misunderstood his mother. He demanded we stay at the gala to maintain appearances. I could not handle it anymore. I promised Ethan I would leave with or without him. He merely seemed ashamed and advised me not to cause a disturbance. I removed the beautiful jewelry Margaret had lent me for the event, handed it to Ethan, and departed. I went to stay with my best friend, Paige, 29 female, whom I'd known since high school. She has been my rock throughout this, reminding me of who I am and where I came from. Ethan didn't even try to prevent me from going. He simply appeared annoyed that I was disrupting his family's festivity. It's been a week, and I'm still at Paige's. Ethan has called and texted, but only to ask me to come home and apologize to his family. He accuses me of being selfish and immature and says I should learn to appreciate the life he has given me. He doesn't seem to comprehend or care about how I'm wounded. I do not know what to do. I love Ethan, or thought I did, but I can't keep living this way. His family treats me as if I were beneath them, and he does nothing to stop it. In fact, he appears to agree with them the majority of the time. I feel like I'm losing myself in trying to fit into their world. Part of me wonders whether I should have known this was coming. There were subtle clues early on in our relationship, comments about my automobile being a starter vehicle, or surprise that I'd never been to Europe, but I was so in love that I ignored them. Now I'm wondering if there was an error. I'm also concerned about what divorce would mean. I signed a prenuptial agreement before we married. At the time, I didn't give it much thought because I never intended to divorce Ethan. Now I'm concerned about the implications for my financial future if I leave. Am I overreacting to this? Should I simply accept that this is how things will be if I want to stay married to Ethan? Is it time to contemplate terminating my marriage and returning to my previous life, even if it means facing financial difficulties again? I could appreciate some outside insight on this. Thank you to everyone who responded to my first post. Your encouragement and suggestions truly helped me think things through. A lot has transpired in the last 2 weeks, and I wanted to provide an update. After spending a few days at Page's, I decided to return home and talk to Ethan. I hoped that if we had a real, honest chat away from his family, we could work things out. I was mistaken. When I went home, Ethan pretended nothing had occurred. He did not apologize or mention the incident during the gala. Instead, he informed me that his parents were coming over for dinner that night, and I needed to apologize to them for my nasty behavior at the event. I couldn't believe what I heard. I assured Ethan I would not apologize for standing up for myself. That's when things became ugly. Ethan began ranting at me, accusing me of being ungrateful and failing to appreciate anything his family did for me. He mentioned how they had paid for our wedding, which I had not wanted to be so extravagant in the first place, and how they had assisted us with the down payment on our home, which I had also wanted to be smaller and more modest. Ethan stated I was fortunate to be with him, and that many women would be delighted to take my place. He even hinted that he had other possibilities, but had chosen me. In that instant, I understood the Ethan I had fallen in love with was vanished. Perhaps he never actually existed. I told Ethan I was leaving and wanted a divorce. He chuckled, saying I'd never make it without his and his family's money. He reminded me of the prenuptial agreement I had signed and told me that if I left him, I would be left with nothing. Then he said something that terrified me. He threatened to use his family's connections to destroy my career if I tried to leave. I grabbed my luggage and departed, returning to Paige's apartment. Ethan has been phoning and texting incessantly, alternately asking me to return and threatening me if I don't. I've been researching my legal options, but I'm concerned about going up against Ethan's family and their costly lawyers. This is where things take an unexpected turn. 2 days ago, I received a call from Lila, Ethan's sister. She offered to meet me for coffee. I was concerned given what had happened with Ethan's family, but I chose to listen to her. When we met, Lila dropped a bombshell. She informed me that she had wanted to leave the family business for years, but was frightened of being cut off financially. She stated she couldn't bear how her parents and Ethan treated me, and it wasn't the first time they'd done anything similar. Ethan had previously been married, Lila claims, around 5 years before we met. His ex-wife, Isabel, was likewise from the working class. According to Lila, Isabel was handled the same way the family treated me, with continual criticism and attempts to change her. Ethan never stood up for her either. Isabel departed their marriage after only a year. Lila claimed Isabel's family gave her a large sum of money to keep silent about how she was treated. They were concerned about their reputation, particularly because they were growing their restaurant chain at the moment. Lila handed me documentation proving everything, including the settlement agreement with Ethan's ex-wife. I was shocked. Ethan had never discussed his marriage before. When I asked why she was telling me all of this now, Lila explained that she couldn't stand by and watch it happen again. She also stated that she was preparing to leave the family business and requested my assistance. Lila aspires to build her own business that is radically distinct from her family's. She has an idea for a meal kit delivery business that teaches individuals how to prepare restaurant-quality meals at home. She has the culinary skills and business ideas, but she is concerned about the reaction from her family. She asked if I would consider doing business with her, suggesting my marketing skills would be beneficial. I'm not sure what to think. On the one hand, I'm upset that Lila didn't speak up sooner. On the other hand, I realize how difficult it may be to stand up to relatives, especially when there is a lot of money involved. And, I must confess, the prospect of beginning a new business is exciting. It would be an opportunity to apply my talents and knowledge in a new context and create something of my own. I have not responded to Lila yet. I am still absorbing what she told me about Ethan and his past marriage. I cannot believe he kept something so important from me. It makes me question what else he could have been hiding. I've chosen to go with the divorce. I contacted a lawyer and began the procedure. The lawyer believes we may be able to contest the prenup due to Ethan's refusal to disclose his previous marriage. Ethan is still unaware of the facts Lila told me. Part of me wants to confront him, but my lawyer told me not to do so right now. I'm worried about the future, yet I also feel relieved. I know I'm making the correct decision by leaving Ethan. I'm just not sure whether I should trust Lila and explore her business proposition. What if it's a trap set by the family? On top of that, my parents found out what had been going on. They are furious with Ethan and his family, and they want me to return home. Part of me wants to accept their offer. It would be an opportunity to regroup and plan my next steps. But another part of me believes that would be going backward. I've worked so hard to establish my life and job in the city. I'm also concerned about the potential impact at work. I'm not sure if Ethan will make good on his threats to damage my career. Should I start looking for a new job just in case, or will doing so make me look guilty? There is so much to think about, and I'm feeling overwhelmed. What are your thoughts, Reddit? Should I take a gamble and start a business with Lila? Is this all too complicated, and I should just leave the entire family? Should I move back to my hometown or stay in the city? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Hello again to everyone. It's been roughly a month since my last update, and much has changed. I'd like to thank you all again for your help and advice. It's definitely helped me get through this terrible period. First, the divorce is proceeding. Ethan wasn't pleased when I served him with papers. He alternated between asking me to return and threatening to ruin my finances. I'm delighted I had Lila's knowledge regarding his prior marriage since it offered my lawyer some power. We are in the process of challenging the prenup, and my lawyer is positive. Speaking of Lila, I decided to get her thoughts on the business plan. We met several times to discuss her ideas, and I must say, I was impressed. Her meal kit delivery service concept is solid, with a focus on educating people how to prepare restaurant-quality meals at home. It's very different from her family's business, and I can see myself being thrilled about it. After much deliberation, I accepted to collaborate with Lila. We've been working on a business strategy and seeking investors. It's exhilarating, but also frightening. I understand that doing business with my soon-to-be ex-sister-in-law carries some risk, but I believe it is worthwhile. Lila has been quite supportive throughout this entire process, and I believe I can trust her. This is when things become complex. Margaret, Ethan's mother, learned last week of my partnership with Lila. She arrived to my flat, enraged. She accused me of attempting to take her daughter away from the family. Then she made a surprising proposal. Margaret offered me $1 million if I walked away from the divorce and the business with Lila. She promised to make sure Ethan treated me better and that the family accepted me. All I had to do was persuade Lila to rejoin the family business and forget about our venture. I was stunned. I informed Margaret that I needed time to think about it. She gave me a week to decide. I'm not going to lie. The money is attractive. It would alleviate many of my financial concerns and make the divorce process smoother. But I know it would mean abandoning my self-respect and betraying Lila. I can't help but wonder if this is some sort of test or trap. What if I agree and they use it against me later? I wouldn't put it past them at this point. They've already demonstrated how manipulative they can be. I haven't informed Lila about Margaret's offer yet. I'm scared it will jeopardize the trust we've been developing, but I also feel bad hiding it from her, especially because it concerns her. On top of that, I've been dealing with some consequences at work. I'm not sure if Ethan followed through on his threats, but I have seen several of my coworkers treating me differently. My supervisor called me in for a meeting last week and inquired if everything was fine at home. He added that he had heard some worries regarding how my personal life affected my profession. I attempted to tell him that I was treating everything professionally, but I am concerned about my job security. I had been debating what to do. The logical side of me says to decline Margaret's offer and go ahead with my plans, but a small voice in my head wonders if I'm making a mistake by turning down such a significant sum of money. What happens if the business with Lila fails? What happens if I can't find another job? I understand I need to make a decision soon. Margaret's deadline is in 2 days. I'm considering declining the offer, but I'm concerned about the potential consequences. What if they try to undermine my partnership with Lila? What if they make the divorce more difficult? I've also been considering my parents' invitation to relocate back home. It would be a new beginning away from all of this drama, but it would also entail giving up the life and profession I've made here. I am not sure I'm prepared to do that. I truly need some guidance, Reddit. How would you handle my situation? Should I accept the money and try to work things out with Ethan and his family, or should I stick to my guns and forward with the divorce and new business? What about my parents' offer to relocate back home? I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and each decision appears to have serious ramifications. It's been a while since I last updated. I wanted to let everyone know how things came out. First, I declined Margaret's offer. It was enticing, but I knew I could not live with myself if I accepted the money. I told Lila everything, and she thanked me for being honest. It actually strengthened our collaboration and increased our determination to achieve. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. It wasn't easy, and Ethan's family pulled every trick in the book to make things difficult. However, because to the facts Lila supplied about Ethan's prior marriage, my lawyer was able to reach a reasonable settlement. Ethan's omission to reveal his previous marriage rendered the prenuptial agreement unlawful, entitling me to a more equal asset allocation. Regarding the business with Lila, we're off to a good start. We launched our meal kit delivery service 2 months ago and have had a fantastic response. We haven't made millions yet, but we're steadily increasing. Lila's culinary expertise, along with my marketing skills, has proven to be an excellent match. We've even received some local press coverage, which has raised our profile. Ethan's family was upset that Lila was quitting the family business. They tried to pressure her into returning, but she refused. I'm proud of her for advocating for herself. We've had to deal with some sabotage attempts, negative internet reviews that we assume were made by family members, and attempts to damage our supplier relationships, but we're dealing with it. Throughout this, my career suffered somewhat. I ended up leaving my position at the marketing agency. I'm not sure if it was Ethan's threats or the stress of everything interfering with my work, but it became evident that it was time to move on. It was terrifying at first, but now I'm glad I did it. Working on our startup full-time has been both tough and gratifying. Ethan has tried to contact me several times, generally after drinking. He fluctuates between apologizing and blaming me for destroying his life. I blocked his phone number and all of his social media profiles. I'm finished with that chapter of my life. I opted not to return to my hometown. As enticing as it was to have my parents' support, I decided I didn't want to abandon the life I'd created here. My parents understood and were supportive from afar. They also made a minor investment in our company, which meant a lot to me. I will not pretend that it has been easy. There are days when I mourn the financial security of my previous life and question if I made the right decision. Starting a business is stressful, and there have been occasions when I questioned whether we'd make it. But then I recall how unhappy I was with Ethan and his family, how they made me feel, and I realize I did the right thing. I'm currently working on creating my new life. The business keeps me busy, and I've started dating again, albeit casually. I'm taking things slowly and making an effort to emphasize my own happiness and self-esteem. I've also reconnected with some old friends who I had lost touch with throughout my marriage, which has been wonderful. Looking back, I realize how much I've developed from this experience. I've learned to stand up for myself, trust my instincts, and refuse to let anyone make me feel less than I am. It's been a difficult journey, but I'm optimistic about what the future holds. I've also learned the value of being honest to myself. I spent so much time trying to fit into Ethan's world that I almost forgot who I was. Now I am proud of my heritage and the ideals instilled in me by my parents. I'm no longer ashamed of where I'm from. It's part of who I am. Thank you again for your encouragement and wisdom along this journey. It made a big difference knowing I had people rooting for me, even if they were strangers on the internet. I hope that my story might help others who may be in similar situations.